Our next task demands that we know how to configure server core, which obviously means running things to the command line. But what's pretty curious about the different commands that you would use to configure server core is that they are exactly the same ones that you would use to configure a full GUI version of the operating system as well. And so as you get further along in your experience with the Windows Server operating system, understanding what these server core commands are and perhaps having that list can actually greatly accelerate your process of configuring any machine, whether it be a server core machine or a full version of that Windows operating system. And so let me go through just a list of those that are kind of useful commands for configuring server core. I would just kind of keep these in mind, not only for the exam, but just as those to put in your quiver to help you get a machine from the just installed state to the state where you can now communicate it with it remotely over the network and from your management desktop. That list of commands starts with the commandlet, the PowerShell commandlet called set display resolution. You may have noticed back when we were going through the configuration of networking on our server core machine that the default display resolution that you get right out of the box, that 1024 by 768 display, I went ahead and actually changed it to 1280 by 720, the default resolution for the video streaming service that you're using to watch this course. Well, the set display resolution command can be used to actually reset the width and height of the screen based on the number of pixels that you require. So 1280 by 720 would be the numbers you would enter in. TimeDate.cpl is one of the very few graphically oriented consoles that still exist in the Windows Server operating system. The TimeDate.cpl will bring up essentially the clock and allow you to adjust the clock settings and allow you to adjust the time zone settings as well. It is the actual control panel item that exists both in the full version of Windows as well as Server Core. Rename computer is useful for actually renaming the computer, and there are a long list of parameters that you would use for defining what that new name should be, as well as add computer. Add computer comes in handy when we start adding our machines into our Active Directory domains. And here in just a minute, I'm going to show you a great little consolidation of a whole bunch of commands into a single command line that with a single, albeit very long command, you can go about configuring the networking, renaming the computer, and adding that computer into your Active Directory domain from one single command. We'll get to that slide here in just a second. Another useful command is a holdover from previous versions of the operating system. That's the slmgr command. slmgr has a couple of different parameters that are important to use, the first of which is IPK, which allows you to define what the product key should be for the instance of the operating system that you're currently working with. Typically, slmgr works, you run two different commands back to back, the second of which being the -ato parameter. When you run the second command, that command activates the license key that you entered in using the IPK parameter. So usually when I'm configuring my servers, I'll run slmgr IPK to put in the proper product key, and then immediately thereafter run ATO to go through all the necessary authorizations so I have a fully activated license. In a world where PowerShell is pretty much everywhere, another holdover from the old batch file days, the old shell programming days, is sconfig.cmd. Sconfig brings up a nice text-based menu like the old BBS days that allows you to punch numbers in to make basic configurations onto a Windows Core machine. This can be handy if, for one reason or another, you can't remember the exact command to accomplish certain tasks. In fact, if there's one command that you should memorize more so than any of the others here, that is the sconfig.cmd command. Because when you're at a loss for the actual command you need, sometimes sconfig can actually accomplish the task without needing to know. Once I've got a machine up and running, I may also need to configure the wsus, the Windows Update infrastructure, and the scregedit command can be used to actually configure the machine so that it has the appropriate settings so that it can download its Windows updates. We talked already about the get Windows feature, install Windows feature, and uninstall Windows feature commandlets. These are PowerShell commands that once the machine is up and operational, you can then go through installing the roles, role services, and features that machine may require. And then lastly is this command enable PS remoting. Now the desired end state with most server core installations is to use the local console for just whatever time it takes in order to get the machine on the network, added to the domain, the appropriate permissions set, and then remoting enabled so that you can use your regular console, your regular management desktop that you use every day to continue with the everyday management of that machine. Now, indeed, there is PowerShell that's there in order to accomplish all kinds of different things and configuration changes you would need on a server core machine. But for the most part, when you're doing your everyday activities, it comes in handy to use the local remote server administration tools that's on your desktop in order to do the vast majority of the work that you'll be doing. In order for that to work, this enable PS remoting command sets up that machine so that it can be remoted from some other location, enabling you to use Server Manager or any of the other tools at your local desktop to perform various tasks remotely. So let me take a minute now and actually just show you the results of some of these commands. Not all of them here, but some of these commands that we would enter in when it comes time to go about configuring a server core instance. Let me minimize this, and we're back here at our server core machine. And here in our server core machine, I want to show you just a couple of the nifty ones that you probably should be aware of. The first is timedate.cpl, because I just want to show you that there actually is the ability to bring up a window in the windowless version of Windows Server. And that is this date and time control panel. It's here that I can go about changing the date and time and changing the time zones, adjusting additional clocks, or setting up a connection to internet time. But even though we have this one, it's one of the very few control panels that are still left in the Windows operating system here in Server Core. The other one I want to show you is sconfig.cmd. And the main reason why I'm showing you this is because, as I said before, if you just can't remember what the exact syntax is to accomplish certain introductory tasks here within this machine or within this server core instance, sconfig provides you with a really awesome way to just simply punch in the correct number associated with, for example, the domain or work group, or the computer name, or adding a local administrator, or configuring remote management that you would need to do just to get this machine bootstrapped up so that you can support remote management. Many of the different commands that I explained just a second ago with that PowerPoint slide are captured here as part of sconfig. So again, if there's one thing that you remember, sconfig is probably going to be that thing. The last of which is enable PS remoting, which is something we absolutely want to make sure that we have available on a machine. And in order to do it, we actually have to get into a PowerShell session first. Enable PS remoting will bring up a long list of just different configurations that are required. If I hit A to choose yes to all, that will go about configuring up the WinRM service so that it supports all the necessary connections from the outside world in order to manage this machine remotely. I believe in an upcoming course, Jason will be talking more about the remote management of Windows servers and get into more detail about how WinRM works. But for now, recognize that Enable PS remoting is probably one of those things that you'll want to ensure is configured on a machine. Now, I've got one more little Easter egg that I want to share with you that has absolutely nothing to do with the exam, but is a really awesome, just single line command that I've managed to construct that allows me to very rapidly configure a machine after I get it installed. This can be for Server Core or for the regular version of the operating system. That command is right here, and it's in fact my favorite command in all of Windows. This command, as you can see, it is an exceptionally long one because the command actually goes through configuring the network settings for a machine. And then once the network settings are configured, renaming the computer and adding it into the domain. These different commands are executed inside of an elevated version of PowerShell and begins with the netsh command. This command is used to go about configuring the static IP address, subnet mask, and gateway address for the network adapter Ethernet 0 right here. Once that's done, the same command is used to add in the DNS server with the DNS server address. The rename computer PowerShell commandlet is used to rename the computer. The add computer commandlet is then used to add the computer into the domain. And then the restart parameter down here at the bottom is what tells the computer, once it's added to the domain, go ahead and reboot the machine to get all these things locked in so we have a fully configured machine that's now in our Active Directory domain. Again, this isn't going to be on the test anywhere, and by no means is this supported other than just to show you that this is a tool that I use. But I just wanted to share this with you because using this can greatly accelerate your steps in getting a new computer renamed, IP'd, and brought into an Active Directory domain.